Samhain is one of the 4 quarter festivals. It's widely practiced now by modern day pagans. It was celebrated in early Ireland. However, there's not much record on how it was celebrated, whereas a lot of the accounts were actually written during that crossover period between Celtic paganism and Celtic Christianity. So it did cause a bit of a blurring, and a lot of the records were written by the Christians. So we don't actually know for sure how the Celtic pagans celebrated this time of year. Now we do know that they split the year into 2. We had the dark half and the light half, and we know the Samhain was the start of their dark half of the year. It was the start of their winter. There's not much record in Scottish, Welsh and other Gaelic communities either about how they celebrated it. We do know that in Scotland it's referred to with more of a V sound, so more of a Samhain, whereas we call it Samhain. The name itself is also widely debated. So many believe it says summer's end, Sam for summer and Fuin for end. However, we also have the name Samhain, and that was a Celtic word meaning gathering or assembly. And now we do actually have records of big assemblies taking place around the time of Samhain. So they would all gather together, they'd probably share stories about their travels over summer, any wars they'd had. So yeah, it all ties in quite nicely to this idea of gathering around this time of year, spending time together. Now modern day pagans tend to take their cues from nature and the surrounding world. And then you've got lighting, also known as lighting the witches. And this would be where local villagers would carry candles around the entire village, around all the fields, in the hope to ward off evil. They would light the candles at 11 p.m, and if they stayed lit till 12 p.m, that would mean that you were then safe for the coming year from evil witches. Which also ties in nicely with Teenlay Night, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that was also carried out on Tuesday, and that was where people would light the bonfires to scare away witches as well. But obviously we don't want to scare away witches here, so we have traditions where we would clean and smudge just to push that negativity out and bring in all that positive energy. And now obviously being a harvest festival, it's a time of reaping in them rewards and also planning ahead for the future and future goals that you're going to be wanting to bring into your life. So we do a lot of that here as a family. I was also asked to explain turnips and why they're carved. Now there's a lot of ideas around this, why we carry on this practice to this day. Now the most common story that most of you will know is Jack, and he was a blacksmith. He was a bit of a cheeky character, he was heavy on the ale and he was a bit of a gambler. And one night he starts gambling away and realises he's gambling against the devil. And again, this bit of folklore comes from that Christian Celtic paganism crossover as well, which is why the devil features heavily in the story. And now Jack, he's a bit of a character, do you know what I mean? He's always on the scam. So he decides to ask the devil and trick him into giving him an extra year. So the devil agrees, trots off. A year later, he returns. Now Jack's prepared for this. So he says to the devil, I'll make a bit of a drink first, would you? So he gets the devil drunk and then convinces the devil that he can't afford to pay the bar tab. So to magically turn himself into a coin that Jack can then pay the bartender with, and then afterwards the devil can materialise as himself and trot off. So the devil agrees, turns himself into a coin, and Jack quickly snatches him up and throws him in his pocket, where he's trapped because he's got a cross. So the devil can't escape. After some arguing and toing and froing, Jack gets the devil to agree to an extra 10 years before he returns for his soul. So again, the devil disappears for 10 years and comes back. And in that time, Jack's had time to put together another plan. So what does he do? He convinces the devil to climb a tree. I mean, the devil's pretty naive at this point, if you ask me, but up the tree he goes, and quickly Jack carves a cross into the tree, trapping the devil where he is. So now the devil's stuck in a tree, and obviously he doesn't want to stay up there forever. So after a bit more arguing, Jack gets the devil to agree that he will never take Jack's soul. Jack removes the carving and lets the devil out of the tree. So obviously the devil goes back home to where he resides, and Jack gets on with his life thinking he's very smart, very clever, and he's outwitted the devil. Anyway, Jack then dies of natural causes. He goes off up to heaven, and God says, well, you weren't a very nice man in life, and lists all his moralistic crimes, and sends Jack down to hell. So Jack gets to the devil's residence, and the devil's like, now I stick to all my agreements, and we made an agreement that I would never take your soul, so you can't come in here. You're gonna have to wander the earth in your own purgatory alone for all of eternity. But the devil decides to be nice in this story, and he gets him a coal burning with hellfire, and Jack carves himself a lantern out of a roof edge he can see, and puts it inside, and off he wanders with his lantern for all of eternity. However, when we look further back again, we also have the story of the Maca masks. Now Maca is one of the goddesses in the triple goddess form of the Morrigan. In some stories she's a sister, in other stories she's not. However, the name Maca means field or plain in Old Irish. It was the goddess's sovereignty of the land and also of the self, agriculture, fertility. She was also a war goddess and the goddess of death. So she's very honoured in the Celtic traditions. Several Macas in Irish mythology. 3 in particular. There's a place called Armagh, I think I'm pronouncing that right, known as Maca's Height, and that's a town in Ireland. And in the Book of Invasions, the town is actually named after the goddess Maca. But this Maca was the wife of Nemeton, and this is where the strong connection to land and agriculture comes in. And then you've got Navan Fort, and that's actually connected to all 3 Macas in the Irish legends and folklore. She was the wife of Cúnaich, and I've probably not pronounced that right. And that's the strong association with fertility. She was very associated with fertility, this Maca. And this is where the horse link comes in, because to save her husband's life, she had to race the king's horses, and she ended up winning. She was actually pregnant at the time, and later after the races gave birth to twins. When she died, legend has it that she cursed all the men of Ulster. So, sorry guys, not down for use. And then the final Maca is Maca the Red. She was the wife of Kimber, and was reported to be the Queen of Ireland at some point. She was allegedly one of the best rulers Ireland's ever had, and Navan Fort was apparently built in her honour. And this is the Maca that represents that sovereignty and sovereignty of self as well. And in some stories she is actually Dagda's granddaughter. She was said to have visited the fields of war in crow form and feast on the heads of the enemies of the men who had fallen there. And that's where we get our tale of Maca Mass from. So the Celts used to take the heads of their enemies, and they would take them home with them and keep them in a nice little separate cubby hole. I mean, I have one, don't you? Don't we all? And they would store their heads there, and that is because they believed that the soul resided in their heads, and that by taking the heads of their enemies, they would cause chaos and havoc amongst their enemies' tribes, because without that ancestral link, they would use that energy. So they'd take away the souls of their fallen warriors and send them all into disarray. And obviously they were called Maca Mass.